Hi, this is Chris, the MLS card guy. Welcome to another video on the channel. Today, match day 2 is upon us in the MLS. We're going to be breaking down all the matchups, and we're going to go through them and see which players may have a tough matchup, which players may have a more favorable matchup, so that you can go through and set your lineups. Now, what I did was went through each position, so for example, goalkeeper, and found the teams that give up the most points to opposing goalkeepers and the teams that give up the least amount of points to opposing goalkeepers. I went through, put them all in a chart, and singled out a few players here that should have pretty decent matchups and some players that should have pretty tough matchups. Now, as a disclaimer, this is not to say that you should sit the guys that are against tough matchups and you should start the guys that have good matchups. This is just a little bit of maybe a tiebreaker. So if you have a couple guys that you're maybe split on, maybe use this as a tiebreaker. Say maybe this guy has a little bit of an easier matchup, or this guy has a tougher matchup. So I went through and found the top five matchups for each position and broke them down accordingly. So first off, we need to look at the actual schedule. So we're going to look at the schedule here. So Friday night, we have Orlando against Kansas City. And then Saturday, Cincinnati and New York City FC, Nashville and Montreal, Vancouver and Toronto, San Jose and Dallas, LAFC and Seattle in a big clash of Western Conference powers, Atlanta against Chicago, Minnesota and RSL, New England against my DC United, Philadelphia and Inter Miami, Colorado and Austin, Portland Timbers against Houston Dynamo, and we round out the day on Sunday with an LA-New York battle. So I'm going to go through each of the different matchups and give you a couple guys that are maybe good matchups and a couple guys that are not so good matchups. So first off, SKC against Orlando. This may be a little bit of a tougher matchup for Sporting Kansas City's defense and forwards and Orlando's midfield and forwards. So I went through and looked at Rotowire's projected starting lineups and just listed off everybody that has a Sorare card. So if you have any of these guys, these are going to have tough matchups this week. So Jalen Lindsay, Luis Martins, Fontes, Danny Shelton, Alan Pulido, Johnny Russell, Nani, Junior Urso, Chris Muller, and Tesho Akindele. All of them have tough matchups this week going against each other. We're not expecting a whole lot of scoring from Sporting Kansas City versus Orlando, and specifically in those positions on Sorare itself. Not to say that the score won't be, a big score, but specifically for those players on Sorare, we're expecting a little bit of lower scores. Next game for New York City and Cincinnati. We have good matchups for New York City, specifically their goalkeeper and their midfielders. We're going to have poor matchups for Cincinnati's defense. Cincinnati, they don't pressure the goal. They don't win a lot of balls in midfield. They don't have a lot of possession. So we should expect to see pretty decent results for NYCFC. Now, we would have expected something kind of similar from DC United. They underperformed last week. We'll see if they can bounce back this week. So the guys with good matchups, Sean Johnson, Jesus Medina, Maxi Morales, Keaton Parks, and James Sands. The poor matchups from Cincinnati, Tom Pedersen, Joe Claude Zhao, and Ronald Matarrita. Next matchup, Nashville against Montreal. So this one could be pretty decent for Nashville's defense and midfield. Montreal, not really much of a game control type of team, and Nashville has a very good defense. So they should, and theoretically, not give up too many goals in this game, which would be good for the defense. So we have Daniel Lovitz, Walker Zimmerman, David Romney, Randall Leal, Hani Mukhtar, Dax McCarthy, and Anibal Godoy, all projected to start in either the defense or the midfield for Nashville. So a little bit of a plus matchup for them. No bad matchups in that one. Toronto against Vancouver, another plus matchup for both sides actually this time. Vancouver defensively should have a decent matchup, and Toronto's midfield should have a decent matchup. So the players to know for that game: Christian Gutierrez, Jake Nowinski, Andy Rose, Marky Delgado, Michael Bradley, Jacob Schaffelberg, potentially Jonathan Osorio. He's listed as questionable, so he may start, he may not start. He would go into that category as well. Next game, San Jose and Dallas. So this one is going to be a good matchup for the San Jose goalkeeper defense combo. Bad matchup for the Dallas goalkeeper defense combo. So San Jose's goalkeeper defensive players: JT Marinkowski, Florian Jungwirth, Oswaldo Alanis. I think Alanis is his name. And then Dallas, poor matchup for them, goalkeeper defense. San Jose presses a lot, so they force a lot of turnovers in the back, leads to some easy goals. They force a lot of mistakes from the goalkeeper in defense. That's why teams don't tend to score very well against San Jose in the back. So that would be Jimmy Maurer, John Nelson, Bresnan, Matt Hedges, and Orion Hollingshead. That would have a tougher matchup this week. LAFC and Seattle. Now, caveat to this game, Seattle... so these rankings are based on the last 10 games, and Seattle killed everybody in the playoffs last year. So they are a tough matchup across the board for every single position: goalkeeper, defense, midfielder, and forward. LAFC is not right now listed as a tough matchup, but the LAFC players that we expect to start that have cards: Pablo Cisnega, Eddie Segura, Tristan Blackman, Atuesta, Mark Anthony Kaye, Latif Blessing, potentially Diego Rossi. He was hurt last week, might be back this week, we're not really sure. And Carlos Vela, technically listed as questionable. I would be very surprised if he doesn't play. Mistakenly subbed off last week. I don't think he's hurt at all, so he should be good for that one. No matchups either way for Seattle. Atlanta, Chicago is the next one. So good matchup for Atlanta's forwards, which is good news for Joseph Martinez, who should play the whole game this week, being rested coming off the Champions League. Only played 15 minutes last week. Hit a lot of people's lineups that way. Didn't really get into the action very much, although he did have a big chance that he missed. But then tough matchup potentially for Atlanta's goalkeeper. That would be Brad Guzan. Robert Barrich starting for Chicago. Very difficult to keep off the scoreboard, so maybe difficult for Guzan to keep that shutout and actually have a decent score. Chicago, tough on goalkeepers. Next up, Minnesota against RSL. Good matchup for RSL's forwards, potentially. However, I don't think they have any. Bobby Wood would be the forward. He doesn't have a Sorare card, so maybe no one to take advantage of that. Tough matchup potentially for RSL midfielders, though. Midfielders would be Albert Bresnik, Pablo Ruiz, and DeMar Krylak, according to Rotowire. Next game, New England against DC United. New England's good matchup is the forward position. DC gives up a lot of chances. You get a lot of shot on goals. Don't really put you under too much pressure. So that would be Abuxa, Gustavo Bo, and Carlos Heel. Poor matchups coming for the DC forwards and the New England midfielders. Problem with DC for the midfield group is that DC doesn't play a lot in the midfield. It's all just defense and then try and launch the ball over the top. So there's not a lot of chances to get in there and win 50-50 balls, so you don't really rack a lot of points against DC as far as the midfielders go. So that could limit the potential of Tejan Buchanan. On the other side, DC's forwards could have a tough day facing Matt Turner, one of the best goalkeepers in MLS. Eric Sorga, Edison Flores, and Yamil Assad. A little bit of a downgrade on them this week. Next up, Philadelphia and Miami. Tough one for Miami's defense and forwards, and then Philadelphia's midfield. So those players would be Jorge Figal, Gonzalo Higuain, Jose Martinez, Alejandro Bedoya. Easier matchup for Miami's goalkeeper. Thinking this is because Philadelphia likes to keep a lot of the ball and they take a lot of shots from outside, so you get a lot of saves against Philadelphia, just based on the fact that they throw a bunch of shots at the net that have very low probability of actually going in. so you can rack up the saves playing against them. John McCarthy is the Miami goalkeeper who would want to take advantage of that. Colorado against Austin. This is another asterisk game. Austin has only played one game. It was against tough opposition in LAFC. So technically, Colorado has a plus matchup all across the board. So the projected starting lineup with Cards would be Kellen Acosta, Danny Wilson, Austin Trusty, Keegan Rosenberry, Jack Price, Michael Barrios, Andre Shinyashiki, Cole Bassett. And then the only plus matchup for Austin would be the midfield. Austin doesn't have a lot of cards because they are expansion team, but Alex Ring has a card from his NYCFC days. He would have a plus matchup in that one. He's a really good performer anyway. Next is Portland against Houston. So plus matchup for Portland goalkeeper and defense. Houston doesn't put you under a lot of pressure. That would be, so another asterisk here. Steve Clark, I would expect him to start. A lot of talk in the chat if he was going to play or if the backup was going to play. When he got hurt and came off last week, he sprinted off the field. I was watching the game. I don't think I've ever seen an injured player sprint off the field before, specifically a goalkeeper. Kind of a weird situation. He should be fine. It didn't really look too bad anyway. So I expect Steve Clark to start, even though that's not what Rotowire says. I'm going with Steve Clark as an executive decision there. The other starters in the Portland defense, Larry's Mabiala, tough one, Dario Zuparic, Jose Carlos Van Rankin. Next, so the other one, tough matchup for Portland forward, that would be Felipe Mora. Houston likes to play low-scoring games. They don't give up very many chances, so tough for the Portland forwards potentially to get going. Last game is the Galaxy against the Red Bulls. We like the matchup for the Red Bulls midfield and forward. Don't think the Galaxy are going to put them under too much pressure. And the Galaxy are also going to want to hold the ball, which gives a lot of chances for the Red Bulls to press and win the ball high up the field. That's going to give you a lot of dual wins for the forwards and the midfielders for New York Red Bulls. And then also they're going to get chances off of those turnovers in the back. So we like New York Red Bulls midfield and forwards. That would be Christian Castro, Sean Davis, and Brian White with cards. Lastly, potentially a tough matchup for the goalkeeper for the Galaxy, obviously because they're going to be put under pressure and give up a lot of chances. That would be Jonathan Bond. He doesn't have a card though, so no need to downgrade his matchup as you can't play him anyway. That is all of the games. So I'll just show you the list here. Now this is a very rough list. So these are all of the games, the good matchups on this side, so players that you would want to keep in your squad, and then the bad matchups on this side. So these would be players that you may want to downgrade, and just to fit it all on one screen, I had to mess with the size here. So some of these go over. Most of them only either have a good matchup or a bad matchup. But that is the scouting report for MLS Week 2. Let me know in the comments who you're going to be starting. Let me, let me see who you maybe think has a good matchup, who doesn't have a good matchup. Follow me again on Twitter at MLS Card Guy, Instagram as well. But that's really going to be it for the video today. I want to say one thing really quickly before I sign off here. I really appreciate everybody with the feedback for the videos. Still obviously trying to grow and learn kind of how to do this and how to create content. I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to create a new thing and kind of learn a new skill. So I do appreciate that. For you guys that are watching and that have either talked to me in the Discord or on the comments on YouTube, I really do appreciate that. So that's going to be the video for today. I appreciate you guys watching. Until the next time, Vamos United.